very, very important things here to do. To borrow extra 20 million for the next, to saddle the district for the next 10 years, to make sure the dual language program is not serving immigrants' kids. All these very important things, to dismantle one very successful school which serves minority population. However, you not seem to care about your Jewish citizens. So besides all the failures of you as a board and as administration, you're okay going down as just condoning anti-Semitism? I don't know. Think about it. Try to answer. I know you never talk to us, but just try to think about it and answer that.
Thank you, Mr. Bershkov. Mike Anderson?
Hello, everybody again. My name is Mike Anderson. Thank you for your time, and I hope my words tonight will help you better understand how the Wiley community feels. On February 22nd, Dr. Ivory Tatum sent an email to Wiley parents stating, "We understand that change is hard and that unknown creates uneasiness. I don't think you understand how this haphazard plan has been received by the Wiley community and how the district school board's actions continue to reinforce our frustration, our disgust, and our mistrust. I can believe the good intentions of the district. I can believe the good intentions of the district to try their best to begin this abatement this summer once that became a financial possibility. Everyone wants Wiley to be renovated as soon as possible, and we understand it will cause the students and staff to be displaced for 1 year. That is where my understanding stops and where my bewilderment on how the district and board has acted begins. Just because you can do something quickly doesn't mean you should. Big projects have big impacts on those that you're stewards for, require time to properly plan with the input from those directly affected. That plan, the fact that the district pushed this proposal without even having a plan in place to reach out to Wiley families and parents made us think that we don't even matter to the district, that we are just numbers on a spreadsheet, that we aren't worth their consideration. The way this entire process unfolded was a huge slap in the face to the Wiley community. Then the board decided to insult the Wiley community even more by, after the 2 hours of logical and heartfelt concerns about how this proposal was being rushed and how it could negatively affect our staff and students, the proposal was voted on under the disguise that the abatement needed to happen right now because of immediate health concerns. They didn't even try to address any of the community's concerns that were brought up, none of which were the apparent immediate health concerns many board members used to justify their yes votes. There are no immediate health concerns, and the Wiley community takes offense to the gaslighting that Tori, Anna, and Brenda used to justify voting yes for this haphazard proposal. If those members are actually concerned about the health of the Wiley staff and students, why haven't they been advocating to mitigate those concerns today? The leaky asbestos glue dots are such a health crisis, as board member Anna stated. Why isn't the leaky roof, which is the cause of those leaky dots and falling ceiling tiles, why isn't that being replaced over spring break? Why wasn't that replaced last fall break or last summer? If the funds to repair Wiley only first became available in November, why wasn't replacing the roof a top priority? It would have been easy to bid out the roof replacement in December with the work scheduled to happen this spring. Why are you as a board and a district okay with having students and staff in a building for 14 more weeks this spring, given that the state of Wiley is a health crisis? Should we go remote for the remainder of the year? Wasn't the dual language plan to bring more students here a few months back? Glad they got voted down, or you would be having to notify more parents that sending their children to Wiley every day is a hazardous risk, according to board member Tori. Now, when nothing has changed, you say it's dangerous to be in there. Yet there are still actions you could take right now to improve the conditions, yet you're waiting until after the abatement? Your lack of consistency and lack of action to mitigate the cause of the concerns is an insult to all those who brave the hazardous, unsafe time bomb that you paint Wiley to be. Communication and optics. Communication and optics are critical areas that can make or break a large project that needs the support and understanding from those the project will affect the most, especially in projects that affect the public. I do not understand how the district and board have not realized that. They have had several opportunities to acknowledge the community's concerns, clearly answer their questions, and make the community feel like we were part of this process. Instead, they have been given wishy-washy answers to some concerns, no answers to other concerns, and instead of making us feel like part of the process as they claim they want to do, all they have done is continue to ramrod their plan through without community involvement. We do not appreciate your gaslighting us and the public while ignoring our real concerns and refusing to discuss and answer our questions on the record. For the 18th time, what is the district's HVAC plan for Wiley facility given the 8 to 12 month lead time on HVAC components? How are you planning on heating and cooling the building in August of 2024? Would someone please give me an official answer? I want to end my statement by proposing a role reversal scenario to ponder. How would you as a district feel if one day you woke up to the news that you and your coworkers would have to relocate to another building for an unknown amount of time? Under that the underlying issue that might have been mitigated, this urgent move, should have been corrected long before ago by those responsible for that building's maintenance, but it wasn't. Then you find out that they are not being responsive to your timeline concerns, and they aren't answering your questions about when can you move back. How does having to set up a temporary office make you feel? How does not knowing how long you will be there make you feel? How do you settle in not knowing if your temporary office will be your permanent office, because those are responsible for repairing and replacing or displace or do not communicate well? Please ponder, and hopefully you will better understand how the Wiley community feels. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Lauren Karplus.
Hello, so I'm the parent of an incoming Wiley kindergartner. And I forwarded to the board right before this meeting the actual survey results from the surveys that were sent to Wiley families and teachers. That data came to me late this afternoon, so I have not had a time to read through them in full yet. But what I will say is that the general tone of the responses to me does not match what the administration presented to the board. So I would urge all of the board members to read over those responses, both parent and family responses. Even the people that said they want Wiley abated, which everyone agrees it needs abating, the question is plan, process, community involvement, right? No one is denying that this needs abatement. But I think if you look at the responses, even the ones who said, I support this decision, in the next question, or several questions thereafter, they all said, I want Wiley kids to be kept together during this process. And so the scattering of Wiley children, I think, is concerning, given that, they haven't been told when or if they can go back. Redistricting will, if this plan goes more than a year, likely it will, based on the timelines we've been given. If this plan goes more than a year, then they're looking at 2 years of displacement and then returning to Wiley and then immediately thereafter being redistricted, which is especially likely even if Wiley returns to a neighborhood school. So right now I'm at the prospect of sending my child to 3 elementary schools by virtue of the fact that we live where we live. And I chose where we live because we live in a working class neighborhood. It's diverse. I love it. I don't want to move. And I can't believe I'm having these conversations with my family that I want my child to go to 1 elementary school, not 3. So please read the actual survey responses that I emailed to the board. I feel like there was a very severe misrepresentation of the family responses in the slides that you saw. And that's a shame. I'm going to make myself an enemy for saying myself, not a popular person for saying this, but I think it's important. Administrators who make very high salaries, let's say over 100,000, should have skin in the game. They should live in Urbana. They should not live in Mahomet. They should not live in Bloomington. They should not live in St. Joe or other towns that they might have chosen to live in for the schools, right? How many times in my life do I have to see, I live in Mahomet for the schools? How many times? So if you're a board member, I would encourage you to think about how you can incentivize living in Urbana for upper level administrators. Because if you're making a lot of money, and this is a very admin heavy district, and I'm not saying that admin is wrong or that admin doesn't have a place, but think about having skin in the game before you talk about moving people's children.
Thank you. Susan Schaffner.
So, this time I actually wrote something. Hello, everybody. My name is Susan Schaffner.
Could you get it?
I
Sorry,
am
could you-
currently pursuing a degree to teach math from 6th to 12th grade. I have a 4th and a 1st grader currently enrolled at Wiley, and I'm actually employed at Wiley as a SPED TA. I'm actually very good at what I do, and one day you guys will understand how lucky you are to have me on your team. Unfortunately, today's not that day. I'm going to make you annoyed, I'm going to make you uncomfortable, and where I come from, we have a phrase, it's called, "It be like that sometimes." It means it is what it is, and what it is what you guys made it. So, that being said, the last couple months have been the closest I have ever been to a school board, and honestly, I'm not very impressed. Ripping a school apart under the guise of keeping children safe while simultaneously disregarding the mental health of staff and students feels wrong. It's felt wrong to me since I was first told about the proposal to abate Wiley. That's why I was up here calling you guys gross. However, where am I at? However, it's no longer a feeling, but something I know to be a fact. How do I know this? Because every single person that I've spoken to about this in and outside of central office has told me this is not how things are done. This doesn't normally happen. But if this doesn't normally happen, why are we doing it? Why is this the one exception to the rule? I don't get it. I'm gonna let you guys know you've made a giant mistake by starting this process with no clear plan. Now you're asking parents and staff alike to rush to fix your mess. As an employee of Wiley who has entrusted this part of my career to this district, I am telling you that you need to do better by us. Better than half-planned trips to view schools, better than angry emails about what other people are posting on Facebook, and better than promises with zero action. As a parent who has entrusted this district as part of the governing agency over my children's education, I am telling you that you can and you will do right by my children. Everyone makes mistakes, and it's part of being human. I do believe that you honestly and truly believe that you think what you are doing is helpful. To be blunt, the only thing you can do to save this mess that you have created is to assure that Wiley will be returned to its staff and students. Wiley belongs to the children who come in every day and work their little brains off to get their education, and the staff who stand 10 toes down by our little buddies to help them through anything and everything. We have done our job. We have taught our children the big three. They know that by changing their school with no plan, you have been disrespectful and irresponsible and just plain wrong. You can and you will do better. You need to do better by these kids.
Thank you. Rob Bennett.
Howdy again. My name is Rob Bennett. I'm a member of the community group calling themselves Wiley Strong, Better Together. Find us on Facebook, of course, or sign up for our call to action mailing list now by visiting wileystrong.com. I was present at the last Board of Education meeting at which the board may have voted to proceed with closing Wiley Elementary for the 23-24 school year. Maybe you didn't. It's not totally clear, to be honest, what you really voted on, other than turning your backs on the community who sat here and gave you every reason in the world to wait and demand a better plan from USD 116 administration. But either way, the next day, and I swear I didn't collude with Mike on our presentations here, February 22, I and all other Wiley families received an email signed by Superintendent Ivory Tatum herself. It was brimming with the compassion and unmistakable community awareness that we've come to expect from administration in recent months. We understand that change is hard, said Dr. Ivory Tatum, and that the unknown can create uneasiness. These words must have been important to Dr. Ivory Tatum. She emailed them out again on February 24 with a slight wording tweak, and that the unknown can make us all uneasy. With this subtle wording change, perhaps Dr. Ivory Tatum, wished to convey a sense of unity with the community she had just senselessly directed the Board of Education to smash. And let's be clear. It was evident to everyone watching in this community that the 4 board members who hastily voted to proceed with this ill-advised, ill-thought-out, financially irresponsible, socially reprehensible abatement had mysteriously made up their minds before that meeting on the 21st. But I digress. Yes. Dr. Ivory Tatum, the unknown, can make us all uneasy. I'm uneasy knowing that my child, just beginning her public education proper, who at Wiley has just found a community that she truly adores after suffering through 3 years of COVIDized destabilization, is now very likely to be moved multiple times, 2, 3, 4, no good reason. I'm also uneasy that the district is visibly just winging this to just such an extent. I have no way to know where she might end up 3 years from now, nor do I have any way to foresee how fragmented and overtaxed her learning community will be as a result of this administration's refusal to engage with their most vital priorities, the ones that matter the most to students and families they purport to serve. But I can presume that whatever Urbana school kiddo lands up in won't be a super happy place if the current administrative behaviors continue. Going back to the first clause of this statement, we understand that change is hard. I'm guessing I know where the inspiration came for this one. The USD administration spent all fall trying to convince Leal Elementary's families to give up their building for a dedicated dual language school. Those families, including Spanish-speaking families, overwhelmingly said no. So I understand it must have been hard for the administration to accept the change in their plans. But serendipitously, just weeks after the board agreed to discuss the dual language concept more in the spring, the admin dropped the bombshell plan to close and remodel Wiley on February 7, pushing the board to accept it on the meeting of the 21st. The 4 board members who voted to proceed with the plan mysteriously asked no questions, even in the face of so much public opposition. It doesn't take a genius to connect these particular dots. The administration has their sights set on closing Wiley permanently as a neighborhood school and getting their dual language school, no matter what the community has to say about any of this. I can't explain what has caused Dr. Ivory Tatum and the administration underneath her to lose sight of what is best for our students, because I know all of you have worked hard to get where you are. I want to remind you that to serve in your position is a privilege, and that in this position it's absurd to view your community as the enemy, as a nuisance to be engaged exclusively with defensiveness, disingenuity, and strategy, instead of taking a moment to remember why you got into education and actually listening to our voices. We want to collaborate with you. You are totally disinterested in working with us, but perhaps all these voices around you will help you to remember why you got into this field in the first place, to remember that we are not your enemy. If you continue along this path, if you continue to ignore your entire community telling you to stop, talk, think it out, I would not be surprised if come time for your contract renewal next June, that you find yourself receiving an email from all the families in your district. We understand that change is hard and that the unknown can make us all uneasy. Thank you.
Thank you. Julia Hockenmeyer?
Hi. I did not expect to be here so often as I have been here in the last few months. I never thought I'd be that parent, but I guess I am. Yeah, I'm a Leal parent, but I'm really here to declare my solidarity with Wiley, and also my anger about your vote 2 weeks ago. Right? As I said 2 weeks ago, the Wiley thing is much worse than the dual language plan. We had much more time to get involved. We had much more time. You're not doing this, right, with the Wiley community, and yet you say, this is so inequitable, right? It's really unfair, right? You can't do this to this community. But what I'm really here today to talk is so, I mean, Wiley is a neighborhood, right? It's not a destination, right? But really this affects all families, right? This affects all residents of Urbana, right? All taxpayers, right? I mean, like, if the school district isn't working, this is gonna affect the whole town, right? It's really, really important, right? You want the best teachers that you can possibly get, right? You want the best schools you can possibly get. Please work towards that, right? There was a lot of talk about shame in previous discussions here. Keep that in mind going forward, because I think this is what happened 2 weeks ago was shameful. Right. I was shocked by the word it is any of the Wiley staff and families that are here and that were here 2 weeks ago, right? But I became actually even more surprised a couple of days later when I saw the asbestos reinspection report from February 22, right, that declared that the school is safe, right? There was no mention of this in any of the board meetings, in any of the slides. This should have been publicly acknowledged. And it wasn't done, right? I happened to find out about it because I happened to talk to people that got together as a group as part of the dual language fiasco. Right, otherwise I would have never known about this. So again, please take all of the information into account, communicate this with the community. We all deserve to know this, right? I also want to get a clear understanding of the scope of your vote. 2 weeks ago, I'm really confused by this. Right. I understand you voted on the abatement moving forward. I understand you signed a consulting agreement, right? I guess I don't know how long the bidding is going to take or any of that to actually get the contractors to do the work, right? But does your vote include a decision about where Wiley students are going to go, right? Is this going to be left to the superintendent to decide? Is the board going to have a say in this? There was no discussion of any of that. Does your vote include an authorization about the ultimate closure of Wiley, about how the repurposing committee is going to be run? Is it going to be a board committee? Is it going to be a committee that's run by the superintendent? None of that was included, right? I have absolutely no idea what you have just authorized, right? Right. So the other thing that I wanted to ask you about is a policy manual change from March 2022. Right. So Article 730 seems to now allow the superintendent to create new units without any board approval. Right. I actually watched the board videos from March 22. I did not see any mention of this change. I have no idea. This was during the time when the dual language thing, when the whole school, right, it was being discussed. So that made me sort of a bit suspicious, to be frankly. So that's why I wanted to actually understand how this change came about. And of course, so this is incredibly relevant in light of the current wider situation, in light of the dual language situation. I really want to understand what's going on here. And I'd also like to understand how that can possibly be consistent with the Illinois school code, right? I also do not understand how that's consistent with the rest of our policy manual, right? So section 730, March 22nd, please look at that again. Thank you.
Thank you. Patty Bergen.
My second yellow ticket, I was hoping when I went home, I have about a 2 to 3 hour window for being able to sit in these kind of chairs. And I didn't think I should sit on the floor here. Okay, so I'm obviously here because I'm distressed at not only as a former Wiley teacher, but I've also taught at Leo, at Yankee Ridge. I've been to meetings and subbed into the other buildings. So I was well aware, and I've been here, like I said before, for all the other changes. The thing that is one of those, and I can be back every Tuesday night to address the yellow or the pink slips in here that would highlight some of the things and additional things regarding the time teachers are going to have to actually pack those rooms. But tonight, I hope to sleep a little better in the next 2 weeks, because you have to know how much this has interfered with me. And I'm going to tell you the reason why. About 25 years ago, I spent all spring going to Little League games at Prairie and Blair and Yankee Ridge, collecting signatures so that we would have a representative board in Urbana. And last Tuesday, or 2 weeks ago Tuesday, I just was like the fruits of those efforts, to see how many people were here with many, many diverse background experiences. And to see person after person try to understand and share their experiences. The idea that my ideas of equity and inclusion and that stronger together, it's broken my heart. Now, I am Urbana. I came here in 1975. I'm not going anywhere. I enjoy wonderful relationships with especially the children in this community. And I value being able to help colleagues that, as many of you know, when I had cancer, many of them, well, I still have it, but when I was paralyzed, that those people came together to build me a ramp so I could get to radiation and chemo. So I will always have a loyalty. And I will always have a sense of pride for working here. But it's a very fragile thing right now when I see what happened 2 weeks ago. Because the people that we want, and we want to celebrate the uniqueness, and especially knowing I come from I was born at Michael Reese Hospital in Woodlawn on the south side of Chicago. And having the background and knowing the history and how easy African American people in that community and others were displaced in the easy manner that they were. And to see that happening, because, you provide numbers, for certain things about different schools. And so to see that it is the people of more modest means that got 2 weeks. And I love my Leo family over there and speaking Spanish all day. But to know that they got 2 weeks and others got 4, months to communicate, it's distressing to a huge, huge extent. I have been rabbit holes for things like rescind, reconsider, and researching things I don't necessarily wish to be researching. And that is not something I anticipated. I anticipated retirement being 20 to 30 hours a week and some Saturday mornings supporting the children. And so there have been a lot of moments over the last couple weeks where I look at kids and go, you're going to be in this huge room, and doing one of those. Because the way the numbers were presented, there was a mission. Because many of us could take those same numbers and prove the opposite for what's good for children.
Rakaya Perkins-Williams.
Good evening. Again, my name is Rakaya Perkins-Williams. This is my third time as well coming to speak to the board regarding the situation with Wiley, the board and the district administration. At the last board meeting, my daughters and I, among others, gave impassioned pleas, research-based facts, rational arguments, and just regular everyday facts why we would like for the planned renovation to be stalled. Yet even after the overwhelming outcry against this ill-conceived, badly timed plan that is obviously a cover-up for school closure, all you heard was blah, 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 I don't like change. This is despite the fact that everyone came up here and said, this is not about the abatement. 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 And just so we are clear, this is not about the abatement. The next official communication from Dr. Ivory Tatum literally stated that the Wiley community was upset about the abatement. Your words, exactly words. We know Wiley has been long overdue for a significant remodel for many reasons. Yes. We are thankful for the opportunity to finally upgrade and renovate Wiley. Yes. A goal we have worked toward for over 10 years. Yes. We realize this has been difficult news for the Wiley community. Why would you frame our argument that way? Why would you mischaracterize our central arguments as us having a hard time with the abatement? What kind of sense would that make? Why would we not want our building repaired? We are not irrational. We're not up here making irrational claims. So it seems to me, as someone who's worked in large school districts, I worked in Detroit, I worked in New York, I worked in Atlanta, that this district's leadership, this nice small town of Urbana, Illinois, is involved in unethical practices, including but not limited to mischaracterizations, doublespeak, gaslighting, intimidation tactics, and flat-out lies. And unlike many of the members of the community, I don't have nothing to lose by speaking up. I don't work for you. You essentially work for me, because I voted every election. I have not missed voting in elections since 1992, when I was old enough to start voting. My spouse, my relatives, they don't work for you. I don't have to maintain a positive relationship with you so that my program or my research study or my IRB or my grant supported organization or my partnership will not be targeted in retaliation. My kids are model kids. They're honor students, they score high on tests, and they're generally good people. I'm an involved, active, black, single mother. I literally could be a poster child for the type of community engagement you seek to foster. I go to every single parent-teacher conference. I meet with all the teachers, even the gym teacher, even the arts teacher. I meet with everybody. I hold my children accountable. I hold the other educators accountable. I hold myself accountable when necessary. Yet you choose to build an adversarial relationship with parents like me. First, you compare Wiley students to unwanted, burdensome animals by stating you want to rehome us. That's language that's only used when you don't want a pet. And no one has apologized for that yet. Just so we know, it was stated publicly. There has been no public apology. Then you stated that we're not even worthy to be addressing this board when you suggest that only some of us are taxpayers. Yet a good deal of your admin team doesn't even live in Urbana. So they're the ones that are not the taxpayers. And then you told us specifically that the extra classrooms at Thomas Paine were built to house Wiley during this abatement. Yet not one single document, and I went through them, about the Thomas Paine renovations speak to that. And that's always bothered me, because why would you build permanent structures for a temporary problem? Say it again. You said, why would you build permanent structures for a temporary problem? Yes. You said there's nothing nefarious going on. That's because district leadership does not see snatching a school from marginalized, read poor and black and other people of color children as nefarious. It's normal. That's what normal everyday racism looks like. This whole thing, the claiming to bring, folks back to the district has left such a bad taste in my mouth that I'm considering leaving the district. I'm considering pulling my kids out of the district. Even if we do actually live in Urbana, there's so many choices. Why would we want to stay in a district where the leadership has such disdain for its constituents? We want transparency. We want a real voice. We want a partnership. And we want to be listened to, not threatened, and not handled. Like I said before, all we have is trust. And I'm going to take a few seconds to read the last part that I did not finish last time. And once that is damaged, then what do we have? If the families of this community do not trust district leadership, then how can we make commitments to stay until our children graduate? We were told to trust the process. How can we trust the process when families are told what we're going to do with our children rather than treated as partners with whom we have best intentions and interests for our children? How can we trust the process when the district definition of equity is proportional racial representation with no regard to the measures of equity, including improved educational outcomes for minoritized students? How can we trust the process when there is not research-based, evidence-based, trauma-informed, community-engaged findings to support this move? So no, this is not about the abatement.
Ephraim Tutwiler. If anybody else would like to make a statement before the board, please fill out a goldenrod sheet in the back of the room. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ephraim. Thank you for having me again. First off, after last week, I really need to respond here. I know you saw the outcry of us here in front, but the language that you guys use up in front of us, as we outpoured what we had to say, you sound like shareholders with a fiduciary responsibility, and it's all about money and not about the people that are here, right? I want you to remember that you guys said a school is a school is a school, right? So to me, it sounds like you've built these extra classrooms to rehouse us, rehome, as you guys used, but I want equity for my kids. With the building and this other, if you guys even are going to bring back our school, I want 6 other classrooms like the other schools got. We're not saying that that's going to happen. Like, I want equity throughout. When my kids end up going to another school, right, there's no plan for, my son is allotted more minutes than what he's able to get right now, right? And with this move, for SPED, right? I'm sorry. I didn't bring this back up. So for SPED, my son is allotted more minutes than what he's getting right now. We don't have enough staff. And what you guys are saying is that you guys are going to fill vacancies, but you've lost so much trust. I've talked to some of the teachers here. You're going to lose so much of your staff here. It's not just about filling vacancies. We're supposed to be better together, and there's been no real conversation with the people that you want to bring together, not only the students, but the staff as well, right? So when my kids have to go to another school, right, are they going to see the same, are they going to see the same minutes come from, say, Mr. Lotz or Mrs. Hall, or where are they going, right? I want to know how this is going to affect my kids, because there's more involved than just that. We don't know where they're going, but yet I'm supposed to take my kids to the visit to see, oh, they may see what other school is going on. There's so much that hasn't been explained. And what we're asking for is you guys to push this off for another year so that you can do more research. So maybe you can find another spot for us to go to so that we can keep the Wiley family together, to keep those test scores up, to keep everything on that better together trajectory. But by splitting us up, you're going to ruin that. And it's not just for the students, but you're going to ruin that in the staff as well. And there's so many staff that you have here that are getting close to retirement. Like, why would you push them out by pushing them to another school without having a plan to bring us back? Like, you're going to commandeer what we had and possibly make it a 6th grade. Like, that still is on the table. That still hasn't been voted out, right? So for us to put in all this extra time to, I feel like I have lost so much trust in the school board right now, just based on what has been said. Like, rehome, a school is a school is a school. There are other things that happen here. We are people too. Our kids are people too. The staff is people too. And I feel like you guys are failing us right now. Like, you need to talk to us like we're people. Maybe it isn't always about how much money we can save or making the easier solution. Because as you will see with other big-time companies as well as other schools, that if you guys can work together, maybe it costs a little bit more now, later on, you're going to reap the benefits. But if you're not going to do that, you're going to fail me as a parent. You're going to fail my kids. You're going to fail the staff and other people in this community, right? And we are held at such a high regard, having the university here and having so many other resources, right? It's hand in hand from pre-K, with everything up. And I feel like you're going to fail us here. This is the time to really talk and research these things. But The fact that you've done that with other schools, and yet we're getting 2 weeks, there's not enough time that was said. Like, have you explored the options that maybe Brookings will be open the following year, right? Have you explored the other options that maybe there may be another space that we can stay together, that we can keep the staff together, that we can find out how SPED is going to go, right? No one else is talking about that, but how is SPED going to go? I mean, right now we don't have enough staff to apply that, but I mean, there's other staff that are going to be that are building staff right now. How are we going to add more kids to the table for pull-out reading, for pull-out math? Like those kids that need extra help, how are we going to get them the extra help? By splitting staff between buildings. How are we going to get them the extra help without adding more staff? But wait, we still have vacancies. How are we going to fill those? I mean, how are we going to fill, sorry, frustrated. How are we going to fill those, how are we going to fill the responsibility that we have to the students, not just the 1 or 2 open holes? Because by putting 4 or 5 kids in one classroom, oh, last thing, and because I've gone over, but I looked at your split. There are 2 families that are going to be sent to Leal. Outside of that, nothing else. You're splitting us all between Thomas Paine and Yankee Ridge, and I don't feel like that's fair or equitable. Like, you put the money into Leal, you put the money into Thomas Paine, you put the money into elsewhere, but why are our kids not getting the same education? Because I don't feel like it would be fair for you to take our teachers and to put them at Leal and to put them at the other places that you are not putting our kids. Those teachers are part of our family, and you're splitting us up.
Thank you. Thank you. Last call for citizen statements. All right. There will be a call for an executive session during our meeting tonight prior to action item 10.3 for personnel. And then there will be another call for an executive session after the meeting for this purpose of union negotiations. There will not be action taken by the board after that closed session. Is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Student ambassadors report.
Hello, board. I want to share concerns of mine that have been brewing. Our high school is in a crisis. On Thursday of last week, I took a pre-planned break from the school. This wasn't because of the work or because I just wanted to stay at home, but it was because of the learning environment. I spent my day at my happy place, King School. Last Friday is a completely different story. I woke up, destined for the day, when I received an email regarding our Black History Month showcase. It said, I was informed by UHS admin a few minutes ago that the show has to be rescheduled/canceled due to possible threats and multiple fights that occurred after school. They will be sending communication tomorrow morning with more detail. Although this is sad news and not what I wanted, the admin team wants to make sure everyone is safe. I responded by saying, I am considering not going to school because of this ridiculousness and dissatisfaction. The exploitation of free education by the black community is outrageous and has now affected the very students that are attempting to reverse the narrative. We can't pursue the revolution because we are assassinating those a part of it. As you can see, my initial response was outrage. I couldn't believe that all of the effort and time we put into this program was canceled in a matter of minutes. I understood that it was canceled because of safety concerns, but I feel those concerns wouldn't have been present if we had a stable system in the first place. As I walk through the hallways, it is apparent that our high school is failing day by day, week by week, semester by semester. It is very disappointing to see the principal have a desk in the hallway, say this is my office, and choose to dabble with his cell phone when there are students choosing not to attend class. Isn't that what we're there to do? So visually and statistically, our school is on a path to a place of no return. This is not personal. I am not targeting anyone. I am targeting the problem. And to be real, the problem is that if we don't make a change right now, our high school will fall into systematization. My questions now are, as students, where are we supposed to go? How are we supposed to channel our frustration properly within these last few weeks of school? How are we going to promote safety within a broken system? I've touched on this before, but I saw one of my teachers break his finger from having to intervene in a fight. And I was also in class with a different teacher when he had to stop instruction 3 separate times, to investigate the noise level in the hallway. And there have been plenty of times where I've walked through the hallway without a pass and nobody has said nothing to me. This furthermore proves that the system of safety in school structure is inconsistent. This inconsistency is causing disruption in learning. And again, I ask, if we are not there to learn, what are we there to do?
All right, thank you very much, Michael. First administrative report tonight is about the Urbana Indoor Aquatic Center Agreement. Katie.
So prepared. Wonderful. Okay. So I put together just a brief outline. The facilities committee has been briefed on all of this throughout the process and has been involved. But we began meeting this fall with Urbana Park District leadership as well to renegotiate the agreement for the Urbana Indoor Aquatic Center. And for those watching at home, the Urbana Indoor Aquatic Center is a property that's owned by the school district and operated by the park district. So I'm going to highlight the major changes. There was really, the rest of the agreement was basically untouched, but there was some key items that were changed that I want to go over with the full board. And if there's questions or you'd like me to go back to the table with the negotiating committee for any reason, we're happy to do so. But we think that we have a pretty solid agreement going forward, and I intend to bring it for full board approval on the March 21st regular meeting. So the negotiating team began meeting September through December. It was composed of President Paul Pulowski, Vice President of the Park Board, Nancy Delcomen, and then Dr. Ivory Tatum and Executive Director Tim Bartlett on the Park District side, and then there was 3 or 4 staff members from each entity as well. We met for several meetings, and then after that, basically I think we had come to a pretty good understanding that staff took it from there to draft the changes in the language, and then since then, that's where we're at today to bring it to the board. Our existing agreement expires at the end of April, so there is another month built in there. I think both districts had hoped to get it approved in March. I'm not sure if the Park District still has that intention or if they were pushing it to April just due to other things that they're dealing with on their agendas, but either way, our goal is to have it approved before the existing agreement expires. So the major changes to the agreement, we negotiated a 4-year contract term. The Park District originally came forward with a 3-year ask. We asked if it would be possible to move it to 4 or 5 so that we didn't have to renegotiate as quickly. Of course, they're our preferred partners at this facility and we want to continue to work with them. But the major message that they were giving us throughout the negotiation project is that they have a lot of unknown financial constraints right now due to the new health and wellness facility that they're building that will be coming online during the term of this agreement. But they were willing to settle with 4 years, and we were really pleased with that. Additionally, we jointly decided to keep UIAC closed over the summer months from Memorial Day to Labor Day. That addresses some personnel concerns. They've had just the same issues with hiring and openings that we have, and keeping 2 pools fully staffed for the summer months, the indoor and the outdoor, has been really difficult for them. So that helps relieve some of those constraints on the operating side. It also helps with our bottom line costs because we can actually drain the pool, not pay for, turn all the lights and temperatures down as low as feasible for the summer months. And then it allows us to do some deeper maintenance items as well that you maybe couldn't do if the pool had water in it. So it's kind of good all around to have that gap of time while it's closed. Oh, and I guess as far as the closure goes, sorry, John, you don't have to go back, but it also, the intention there is that the pool would be refilled in time for our swim team season to start. So even though it wouldn't reopen to the public for any other programming opportunities that the park district runs, our swim team will still start practicing on their normal schedule, which is around the beginning of August. So the next change was a shift a little bit in our maintenance philosophy. So under the current agreement that we're operating under now, all operational issues are really the park district's responsibility as our partner. But we've learned over the last several years that having some involvement of Urbana School District staff has been a benefit, because we have staff that have some really specialized skills, and if they're on site and can help triage some issues, we've both saved by not needing to call contractors out to deal with issues that maybe we can troubleshoot in-house. So we kind of added this sentence to the agreement. I have this section cited, that we basically agree to triage issues internally by both districts before we call external contractors. So that's good overall, and we've really liked working. Randy's employee Brian has been really a great asset at that site and has a lot of HVAC and other electrical expertise, so it's been really good. And we've already been kind of doing this, so this was just kind of memorializing that in the language of the new contract. So getting into the good stuff, the operating splits for the park district, or for the school district and the park district, historically over the life of the pool since it opened in 2001, just to give everybody a little history. When it first opened, I think there was some really good intentions that it would be more self-sustaining than it ever has been. It never ever has been. But towards the beginning of the agreement, the first 17 years were usage-based, and the original splits were closer to 60% USD, 40% UPD, but it was all based on how much we used the facility. And what happened and what the experience was is that as USD experienced some financial constraints and pulled out of doing some of the things, the shares shifted, and it was more like 60-40 park district, school district, but not because the pool was getting used anymore by either party. It was actually getting used less. But the costs remain the same, and that cost split really put a lot on the park district at that time. And so when we renegotiated with the 5-year agreement that we've been operating under, that we've had 2 one-year extensions on, so it's really been the last 7 years, we changed to a 50-50 split that doesn't have anything to do with usage. And it was just to maximize the usage of the pool to the most we possibly could. And it's been pretty effective. We've been able to try to fill that pool with as many community members as possible, public and school district. Whatever uses are needed at the time, we try to fit them in. So that's been really a good shift, but ultimately with the park district's constraints, they're asking if we can take on a slightly larger share over the term of this agreement. So over the first 3 years, it'll shift back progressively, so 50-50 in year 1, 55-45 year 2, and then 60-40 in years 3 and 4. Our current operating splits are between 200 and 250,000, so those will shift accordingly. And we're hoping that with the closure, the 3-month closure, and other, efforts to reduce costs and become more efficient, that will kind of keep it in that range, even as those percent splits shift. Next slide, please. So the other major financial shift is how we're going to be handling capital improvements through the agreement. So historically, we split all capital improvements 50-50 for the first 17 years of any, and they define capital improvements as any item over a certain dollar threshold. So it's not truly capital, because it's really the school district's assets, and it really they do belong to us, but we agree to split those. But then under the last 7 years, we've changed that methodology slightly, that anything over $80,000, so 40-40, gets split school district 60, park district 40. And that recognizes the fact that we really own this building. So we take on a slightly larger share of the capital cost. Well, in an effort to, again, somewhat limit those costs going forward, the proposal and the way that we've changed the draft language is that we have a known list of projects that need to be completed at the site. Before we entered into the last 5-year agreement, there was a survey done. We hired an engineer to come in and do like a comprehensive study of the facility needs and to let us know what was kind of the upcoming capital needs and help us schedule those out. And both districts benefited from that because we were able to take care of some of the really major things, like the pool pack unit needed to be replaced, et cetera, under the last agreement. Well, we've done a great job of getting that list down, and a lot of the things that are remaining are a lot smaller dollar value. But we still wanted to honor that old agreement of the 50-50 up to 80,000 and then 60-40. So we crafted language that we added a list as an appendix to the agreement, which includes the existing known capital items that are still outstanding, and we're still going to agree to split those items under the current existing structure, even if they extend beyond the first year of the agreement. But our intention is to try to get as many of them done in the next year as possible. But due to, COVID, manufacturing delays, anything, we didn't want that to be limited in that way. So if one of those, or also to give the management team who selects when to do these projects some flexibility, if we say, well, we said 3 pumps need to be replaced, but 2 of them are fine, and we really only need to do the one. So maybe we do that one in year 1. Well, then in year 4 of the agreement, another one fails. So we've kind of crafted the language so that even if that fails in the future, that'll be the structure that those items are still split under. And then beginning in year 2, both districts will contribute a flat $20,000 to a rolling accumulating fund that if it's spent, then 100% of additional over $40,000 total will come to the school district. If it's not spent, it'll accumulate forward into future years and be used as a first source before anything comes to the school district. So, and just to be clear about that, because the 20,000 contributions don't start until year 2, if there are emergency capital items that come up in year 1 when we're trying to take care of this known list, those will be 100% on the school district as well, because we don't have any other splits for that first year other than what's on that list. So I just want to make that really clear. And it does happen. It's an aging facility, and we have a lot of problems there that just come up. So we all know. Of course, we could always choose not to do those things, and depending on what it is, that could affect the operations of the facility or not. But sometimes we can kick the can a little or plan it out a little bit if we can. I guess we can move. So sorry, that was both of those slides. There was 2 slides about the capital splits because it shifts over the agreement. And then lastly, the other major thing that we spent a lot of time talking about and then not much really changed is parking considerations. The park district, as the operating agent of the pool, deals with a lot of we have the blue spaces down the middle of the pool that are dedicated for, it's the middle school parking lot, but they're dedicated for users of the aquatic center. And over the life of the pool being open, we've had a lot of parking conflicts there where if there's a big event in the evenings, a football game or something, then if anybody's ever towed, we have angry adults coming and yelling at teenage staff, and it's just not been great. So in an effort to kind of address some of those concerns, and the park district doesn't, want their staff treated like that, what we're planning to do is that during large USD events, like after-school type events like football, messaging will increase at the aquatic center to communicate that all spots become first come, first serve in that UMS lot. So that'll hopefully avoid those conflicts. And yes, there may be aquatic center users that can't find parking or whatever, but that's probably better than dealing with some of the conflicts they've dealt with over the last several years. And there was also some discussion about relocating our, when we have events, relocating buses outside of that lot over to one of the other UMS adjacent lots, and that's in the agreement too. But this is the one that I think affected us the most, and I think we're pretty happy with that outcome as well. So if there's any questions, I think that covers the most of it, unless Paul was at facilities. He is also part of the negotiation team, or Dr. Ivory Tatum, if I missed anything.
No, just as you could refresh my memory. Either side has an exit clause for this, and I believe it's 3 months, or is it 6 months?
Let me double check. I don't want to say anything wrong, but it is in here.
I think it's 90 days.
I think it is duration of agreement in writing 60 days prior to the expiration of the pending term.
Okay,
so when the next year
so
is
every
coming.
year, 60 days prior, each side can decide to exit the agreement.
Yeah, and I think that was one of our arguments for saying, hey, 3 years, we'd really rather this go longer. And I really appreciated the Park District's response on that, was that they said, well, we're really fully committed to whatever we decide. We don't plan on using that clause, and we think that's, not the most ingenuous, it'd be a little disingenuous as a partner to do that. So, I think I feel comfortable that we'll hopefully be there for the full 4 years and then going forward as well. So, that allows them some time to kind of settle into this new facility and kind of get their their feet wet, so to speak, with the pool agreement and make sure everything's still comfortable for them going forward and for us.
Now, I just want to comment on the process. It was very congenial. I think the Park District has proven to be one of the strongest public partners, and it was proven out during the time. The negotiations weren't rancorous at all. It was very collaborative. So
I agree.
I always want to thank Tim and his team for all of that.
Yeah, I agree. It went really well. Any other questions? Great. Well, I plan to bring that on March 21st. If you do have any other questions you think of, feel free to email me.
Katie, I just thought of one. The park board is talking about this also this week, or
So-
at their next meeting?
So their meetings are the first and second Tuesdays,
Okay.
but for some reason, I had thought we'd both jointly agreed to bring it to our business meeting this month, but
Yes.
at our last UIC management team meeting, they said that they were planning to bring it in April, so I'm not sure if they had other things that bumped it from their schedule,
Okay.
because I think they just have a lot going on with, I think, bidding with the whatever projects they've got going. But I'm fully confident, if our board moves through with approving this, that they will as well. I mean, they've had multiple discussions at the board level. This is really our first full board discussion, really, since this has gotten going. But they've had, 2 or 3 study sessions where they've brought back updates to their board. So I think they feel comfortable.
Thanks.
Our policy review tonight is Press Plus 110.
Okay, and this one is not as intense as other press reviews that we've had. This one is due at the end of March. As always, I provided a summary for the board. I know you get the full document with all of the policies, and I know some of you read those from beginning to end, but what I usually attempt to do is highlight the items and the changes that are most relevant. There are quite a few changes here that we have already talked about. So instead of, we've had some really long meetings. So instead of belaboring going through all of them, I've just kind of highlighted some of the items that we've not talked about as much. But if the board has questions about any others that I did not include in the review, I'm happy to spend a little time talking about those as well if you have clarifying questions. So we will be bringing this at the business meeting for approval. So if you have questions between now and the 21st, please let us know because we do have to upload this at the end of March into our policy system. So the General Assembly, going into our review document, passed 2 public acts impacting student eligibility for school fee waivers. So I've listed both of those. They're also listed in the descriptions. So the waiver of fees are relevant for students who have parents who are either veterans or active duty military personnel. And this particular press added homeless children and youth as also students that are eligible for waivers. And that includes for any fines and school fees. So we have always operated under the waiver system for school fees. And then we send out bills regularly throughout the year when we have fines, and a fine might be a library book or a lost, library book is the first thing that popped in my head. Like a P-lock or some of those kinds of things. And this actual change in the press and in this public act requires districts to waive those fines as well. The other laws are kind of go through the categories. So the next major category of something new is related to district finances and operations. We've already talked here a little bit about the Freedom of Information Act, Safe to Help, school threat assessment procedures, the suicide prevention information, which we've already kind of moved forward with implementing for the student IDs at the middle school and high school. The really big one in this area is allowing districts to share information in employees' records related to sexual misconduct and defined in FAFE's law. So FAFE's law, you'll be hearing a lot about that. I'm sure HR will bring forward some information. But it has been passed. Faith laws gives employees a private right of action if an employer improperly discloses disciplinary actions from their personnel records. So basically, Urbana lived through this with the, yep, thank you, Brenda. I wasn't gonna say the name, but that is what it was. That's okay. But that is basically why this law was created. So now districts are no longer going to be able to not properly disclose if they have an employee that has been accused of sexual misconduct in any way. It is going to be a little burdensome on school districts because school districts are going to be required to reach out to any prior employer for, I think, going back to any supervisory position that a staff member who is seeking employment with us has had in the course of their whole employment personnel record. So if we have a new teacher who comes to us who was a lifeguard when they were 15-year-olds and they supervised kids in that capacity, we will have to go all the way back and talk to someone about that. And ISB has created a very specific form for this with very specific questions that districts who are receiving employees are going to have to ask questions. But also districts who are, we will have a form that we'll have to fill out for districts that call us and ask about our previous employees. So it will be a lot of paperwork, but for all the right reasons. So we will, within our state, no longer will districts be able to not disclose any misconduct that they are aware of. Dating back for many, many years of someone's personnel's record. So this is the beginning of Faith's Law. It is listed several times throughout the press in all the different areas. So in terms of district's operation, in terms of employee ethics, code of professional conduct. It's also listed under prevention of child abuse, sexual abuse, and grooming behaviors. So we will share that information. ISB literally just released the forms, I think, last week. They've been working on them. And again, this is effective for districts as of July 1, 2023. Another big highlight is there were some changes in DCFS protocols. Previously, a district could appoint a DCFS liaison. Now districts are required to do so. We have always had one. Ms. Franklin, Dr. Franklin serves as our DCFS liaison for the district, but that change is now a requirement. There's some requirements related to other student attendance things like civic events are now allowed for middle schoolers and high schoolers. They can be excused to attend a civic event sponsored by a nonprofit organization or governmental entity. So that is new. We've talked about this, I think, when I did the January preview. We're no longer allowed to withhold students' grades, transcripts, or diplomas for unpaid balances or fines on their student account. I can't remember if we talked about this one in January, but the Crown Act, to create a respectful and open workplace for natural hair, is a new law in terms of prohibiting racial discrimination because of a way an employee would like to wear their hair. That actually started from a student. I can't remember the young man's name, but it was in the Chicago area, who was sent home from school because of the really unique way that he wore his locks and hair adornments. And so now that is going to be also passed, not just for students, but also for employees. So moving into curriculum and instruction changes, we had a presentation last month. Katie Madigan came from Early Childhood as a representative for MAD and talked to us about safe gun storage. So that is now a requirement to include some information about safety in the home and safe gun storage as part of their safety education programs. We've not really figured out how we're going to do that yet. We have a little time to do that between now and July 1, but that is new. And so Kim will work with the curriculum department to embed that into our safety education programs. It might be something that maybe we can do. I'm looking at Linda Gibbons through Risk Watch. So that might be an area where we could include that. We've already talked about the requirement to have a class at the high school level in computer literacy. So the high school staff has been working through that. And I think the last one that I haven't covered is filing our bullying policies electronically. We started doing that this past year. So those were the major highlights. I think I hit all of them that I included here, but if there was anything in the big packet that you want to pull out and talk about, I'm happy to do so.
Board members, any questions?
I have a couple, and because I didn't ask these earlier or email you to give you answers, you don't have to answer right now, but it sounds to me like the mandates are unfunded as usual.
Yes.
Is there a way, is there any entity that's going to provide guidelines for the safety? I mean, and is this safety instruction, I mean, it's great, I think it's wonderful, but is that solely going to be about gun storage safety, or is there going to be other components of safety, you know, like dangerous medications or dangerous anything around the home and other people's homes? Is anybody going to provide guidelines for us, or is anybody going to offer us tools to help implement in curriculum? That was one question. And then sort of the same thing with the computer literacy. Again, I know it's unfunded, it's not, you know, it's mandate and it's great and I love it, but do we get help from anybody and how we can implement that in our curriculum?
So the gun storage one, as far as I know, Ann, and we can look into that, it is specifically about gun storage. I haven't seen anything about medication or anything else like that. I think the group that was here and talked to us would be a great resource for us to tap into because they already have a lot of resources. That's why it was great when they approached me and said they wanted to come and talk about that. I thought it was really good timing for us, and it would be a great connection for us to reach out to them for some support. And what was your second one?
Well, the second one was about computer literacy.
Oh,
and
the
also,
computer literacy.
Before I even finish, do you mean media literacy or do you mean computer literacy? Like, I'm thinking social media, I'm thinking news and all sorts of media that we use electronically, not just how to use computers, right?
No, it is more so a computer literacy, very specifically about, but I'll let Kim.
Yeah, that's specific to computer literacy, but typically when there's these mandates, it's never, here's your resource, here you go. You know, so it involves having curriculum teams take a look at a lot of different things to see how we can best implement that in our district.
Thank you. I mean, I knew it wasn't going to be an easy answer, and, you know, they never fund anything. It would be wonderful if they'd throw some money our way to help, you know, with the research of that, but at least I'm glad that we have these in place. Thanks.
And I think the conversation we had with Ms. Rinkenberger, who is kind of the curriculum person at the high school, is that there's some computer literacy things that exist in multiple different classrooms, classes and courses that we can pull then to create a course. I think it would be something like a personal finance course, not something that would be, you know, like chemistry or, you know, that goes over multiple, yes. But yes. Yeah, so she's been thinking about that a little bit when we found out that this was going to be a requirement, so.
Any other questions? All right, so this will be coming up for a vote in 2 weeks, so if you have any questions at any time, please contact administration. Our first action item tonight is 10.1, the band room renovation bid approval. Is Randy have any info you can give us now?
We received bids from we received bids for the Urbana High School band room expansion renovation project at 2 p.m. on March 1st, 2023 from 4 general contractors. The low bidder, if all alternates are accepted, is Barber and Diatley from Urbana, Illinois, with a bid of $847,250. IGW has reviewed the scope of the work and the bid amounts with Barber Diatley, and they are comfortable with their bid. I would recommend that the district accepts this bid and maintain a 10% construction contingency for the amount of $87,425 for unforeseen conditions discovered during the construction phase.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion to approve accepting this bid?
I move to accept the bid.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Member Hasnadka?
Yes.
Member Hall?
Yes.
Member Orr?
Yes.
Member Ogalski?
Yes.
Member Carter votes yes. Vice President Exum?
Yes.
And President Pulaski?
Yes, 10.2 is a list of administrative personnel items that were in our packet this week. Is there a motion to approve these changes?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Member Hasnadka?
Yes.
Member Hall?
Yes.
Member Orr?
Yes.
Member Ogalski?
Yes.
Member Carter votes yes. Vice President Exum?
Yes.
President Pulaski?
Yes, at this point, the chair would entertain a motion for an executive session, personnel matters, i.e. the appointment, employment compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees, specific individuals who serve as independent contractors or specific volunteers of the district, or legal counsel of the district, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee, specific individual who serves as an independent contractor or volunteer of the district, or against legal counsel for the district to determine its validity. However, a meeting to consider an increase in compensation to a specific employee of a public body that is subject to the Local Government Wage Increase Transparency Act may not be closed and shall be open to the public and posted and held in accordance with this act. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Member Hasnadka?
Yes.
Member Hall?
Yes.
Member Orr?
Yes.
Member Ogalski?
Yes.
Member Carter votes yes. Vice President Exum?
Yes.
President Pulaski?
Yes, please pardon us for a short time. We'll be back as quickly as we can. back in open session. Up next is 10.3, adoption of a resolution authorizing dismissal of a full-time teacher in last year of probationary service. Is there a motion to bring this to the floor?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion that happens now would have to not have any personally identifying information. Okay. Yep. Hearing no discussion, roll call, please.
Member Hassanaka?
No.
Member Hall?
Yes.
Member Orr?
No.
Member Ogalski?
Yes.
Member Carter votes yes. Vice President Exum?
Yes.
President Pulaski?
Yes. 10.4 is adoption of a resolution authorizing honorable dismissal of a teacher grant funded. This affects one individual who was affected by loss of grant funding or uncertainty of grant funding. Is there a motion to bring this to the floor?
So moved.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Member Hassanaka?
Yes.
Member Hall?
Yes.
Member Orr?
Yes.
Member Ogalski?
Yes.
Member Carter votes yes. Vice President Exum?
Yes.
President Pulaski?
Yes. 10.5 is adoption of a resolution authorizing honorable dismissal of a full-time education support personnel. Excuse me. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
A roll call, please.
Member Hassanaka?
Yes.
Member Hall?
Yes.
Member Orr?
Yes.
Member Ogalski?
Yes.
Member Carter votes yes. Vice President Exum?
Yes.
President Pulaski?
Yes. 10.6 is adoption of resolution authorizing honorable dismissal of full-time grant-funded educational support personnel. This affects one individual. Is there a
So moved.
motion?
Second.
Moved by Tori and seconded by Ann. Roll call, please.
Member Hassanaka?
Yes.
Member Hall?
Yes.
Member Orr?
Yes.
Member Ogalski?
Yes.
Member Carter votes yes. Vice President Exum?
Yes.
President Pulaski?
Yes. 10.7 is adoption of a resolution authorizing honorable dismissal of full-time grant-funded educational support personnel. Again, this affects one individual.
So moved.
Roll call, please.
Member Hassanaka?
Yes.
Member Hall?
Yes.
Member Orr?
Yes.
Member Ogalski?
Yes.
Member Carter votes yes. Vice President Exum?
Yes.
President Pulaski?
Yes. 10.8 is adoption of resolution authorizing honorable dismissal of full-time grant-funded educational support personnel. This affects one individual. Is
So
there?
moved.
Second.
Sorry.
Okay. Ann and Tori. Is roll call, please.
Member Hassanaka?
Yes.
Member Hall?
Yes.
Member Orr?
Yes.
Member Ogalski?
Yes.
Member Carter votes yes. Vice President Exum?
Yes.
President Pulaski?
Yes. 10.9 is adoption of a resolution authorizing honorable dismissal of part-time grant-funded educational support personnel. This affects 2 people. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
A roll call, please.
Member Hassanaka?
Yes.
Member Hall?
Yes.
Member Orr?
Yes.
Member Ogalski?
Yes.
Member Carter votes yes. Vice President Exum?
Yes.
President Pulaski?
Yes. And finally, 10.10 is adoption of a resolution authorizing honorable dismissal of part-time educational support personnel. This is affecting 5 people. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Member Hassanaka?
Yes.
Member Hall?
Yes.
Member Orr?
Yes.
Member Ogalski?
Yes.
Member Carter votes yes. Vice President Exum?
Yes.
President Pulaski?
Yes. Most of these positions are, we're hopeful that grant funding will come in to rehire them, or they'll find other positions in the district, most of them. Our study topic tonight is 11.1, social emotional learning presentation. So thank you guys for hanging out while we talked in the back.
And while our leaders are getting settled, this will be the first part with many others to come in this series. They'll be talking about social emotional learning this evening with our first district goal, with resources and supports, and then we will follow at our next meetings, focusing on our other goals.
Thank you. We could pass. Yeah. I'm Linda Gibbons, and I'm here with 3 of my fabulous colleagues. And we're going to be speaking with you tonight about social and emotional learning and the Urbana School District, how we do it here. I want to just say that I've come before the board several times, many times before, and I'm usually by myself. And I think this is sort of a show of unity here, how much our district has adopted and wants to be a part of social and emotional learning. So everybody is contributing something as part of their position to SEL. So what we're going to do today, so this is Dion Webster, Christina Kale Lewandowski, and Tanya Deacon. Okay? So we're going to talk just a little bit about the past, what it's looked like in the past, what it's like now in the present, and maybe a little bit about the future. So I do want to say that, Urbana School District has had a long history of being aware of social and emotional learning and, really making sure that our children have both social and emotional learning and academic challenges are working together. So, I'm just going to take a little side note here because I do want to say that all of the administrators that I work with sitting in front of me here are top-notch when it comes to being concerned about our students and social and emotional learning. And it is difficult for me to hear some of the things that are said about all of you because I know you. So I just want to say that they have adopted social and emotional learning across the board and care about our students. So really how it started was probably in 2005 when Illinois adopted the SEL, social and emotional learning standards. We were the first state in the nation to adopt those standards, and that's very impressive. So we started really learning about, well, what does this mean? What is social and emotional learning? And the standards are still usable. They're good. They have good information in them. And from there, we started hearing about a group out of Chicago called CASTLE, and that is the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. And the work that they were doing, they were a think tank and doing lots of research in the area. And what they were finding out is that by working with our kids in more of a whole child manner, they were more successful in school. So they actually, way back in the early 2000s, came in and trained Urbana schools. And at that time, though, we were focusing primarily with our social workers. Our social workers did, they were trained. They were the ones that went around and did life skills in the classrooms. And what we found is that was really difficult because it took up most of our social workers' time. And so eventually our program council adopted Second Step, which is a life skills curriculum. We were able to purchase it for all of our teachers in the district, early childhood through grade 5, and eventually in middle school too. And at the same time, we selected Morning Meetings, a book that teachers learned about doing classroom meetings and building community within their classroom. So those two materials we've been using all of this time since early in 2009. We've updated, we've purchased new along the way, but we've found that those are pretty good materials, and always our challenge is to really integrate it within everything else that we're doing in our classrooms. And finally, I will just say something about Second Step. I mean, it's a research-based curriculum. And that is done, well, we selected it for early childhood through grade 5, and in the middle school we used it there for a while, but now we're using positive action at the middle school, and we've introduced 3 signature practices at the high school level. So that's all I'm going to say about our history. I guess I got selected because I'm kind of the old geezer of the group, and I actually remember this whole process. So, so I'm going to turn it over to Dion, and she's going to talk about Social Emotional Learning Committee, which we formed in 2020.
So Linda and I started talking in 2020 during the pandemic when we were noticing lots of needs with our students, our families, and our staff members of needing to pull everybody together. So we discussed it amongst ourselves and we formed the Social Emotional Learning Committee. We had our first meeting in July of 2020, and we were really impressed that people were willing to meet in the summer of staff members for a small, very small stipend once you figure out how much it comes down to, but they were willing to meet. We worked with them. We had a job description. We, did quick interviews, but people who were really committed to supporting social emotional learning. And then we built from there. So then there were some people who couldn't continue for life reasons. So we opened it back up. We got from early childhood through high school. We had staff members apply for the stipend and to serve on the committee. And for a year, we worked on the beliefs, the mission, and the vision statement. And then we finalized those statements in 2021 and 2022. But we took a year to really talk about what we wanted our belief stations to be, what we wanted our mission to be, what we wanted our beliefs to be for social emotional learning in our school district. And we did that by discussions. Linda was a great resource of historical knowledge, not an old geezer, but of historical knowledge. And we also looked at other districts' websites, and we kind of went from there and wordsmithed the vision and mission and beliefs that are in the packets that you have. I won't read them to you, but they are there. If you have any questions when we're done, we'll be happy to answer them. So I will just skip to our Social Emotional Learning Committee. So in 2020, when Linda and I started it, we also created an SEL newsletter that we did with SMORE because we wanted to make sure that families had information. So during that time, lots of schools were having parades and teachers were doing different things for students, and families were actually doing things for vice versa to support the staff. So we put a lot of that information in the Social Emotional Learning newsletter. We put tips on how to support your children through the pandemic and also for staff members. And then as we've gone on, recently now it's published quarterly. We did it monthly during the pandemic because it was needed. And then we switched to quarterly, so now Tanya produces that and she will present later. But our committee has really grown over the past few years, and we're really proud of the growth that we've had to support students, staffs, and families. And we've also worked together to create an Urbana SEL website that you can also access here that we have been working on and wordsmithing to make it a resource not only for teachers but also for families, because a lot of families want to know how to have conversations with their children at home, how to support the SEL competencies that are connected to our district character traits, etc. So all of that information is there. And we're also currently working on in the SEL committee a social emotional learning handbook. And that handbook will be for all teachers and staff members just to help them embed the strategies of social emotional learning into their daily classroom practices. Because what we don't want to do is create one more thing for our staff members who are already doing an exceptional job with curriculum. But we want to give them talking points and tips to embed social emotional learning into their daily practices so that it becomes second nature for them. As we were doing our research on social emotional learning and ways to support it in Urbana School District, we came across SEL Day. We didn't have enough time to do it well last year, so this year we talked to the committee about it, and we decided as a committee, instead of SEL Day, we wanted to do SEL Week because we wanted to make sure that we had time to celebrate social emotional learning, the value of it, embed the curriculum that we're using, the second step, morning meetings, positive actions, the 3 signature practices. But we wanted to have a total district-wide designated time to really focus on social emotional learning and its importance in our community. So we started brainstorming in January, and what we decided to do was come up with a list of suggested activities. We created that as the SEL committee, and then we sent it out to all district administrators, asked them to look it over, discuss it with their staff members, and add suggestions. Because our main goal was to make sure, again, that we were supporting the schools in this initiative and giving them ideas, but we also wanted their input. We wanted to do it with them. So we had several different great suggestions, additions, so we finalized it towards the end of January, and that's also linked here as well. And so we are in the second day of SEL Week, terrific Tuesday of SEL Week. So every day this week, I've been sending out a district-wide email with an SEL spotlight. We are having drawings for adult SEL kits, so we will have 60 kits. They aren't getting the kits this week, unfortunately, due to our relocation, but they will get them after spring break when we can recopy some information and get materials together. And we've also sent materials to all of the schools. So Tanya worked on posters for the middle school and high school in English, Spanish, and French, supporting social emotional learning. We sent resources to the elementary schools and middle schools as well to just make sure that we gave them extra information of something fresh for SEL Week that we also, of course, want them to continue to use throughout the year, but of just something to springboard the week.
Good evening. On this slide, oh, can we go back one? Thank you, John. Second step, technical difficulties. As Linda mentioned earlier, we've been using Second Step in early childhood through 5th grade within the district. It has been great as far as the teachers have some flexibility with it to take a look at the topical contents and use that for what might be necessary within their classroom. Second Step, last year there were conversations, I think Ms. Webster and Ms. Gibbons talked with the middle school. They were feeling that Second Step wasn't necessarily keeping up with the trends for today's youth, and so they investigated and they found positive action. And so they've been using that this year. There was a small committee formed at the middle school that went through the materials to make sure that they were making it user-friendly for the staff and helping them to pinpoint what themes might go with our competencies and character traits that we look at throughout the year. Our final, the 3 signature practices, I don't remember if it was Ms. Gibbons or Ms. Webster brought that back last year. I think you had a meeting on Zoom with a former friend. And so we came back with the 3 signature practices. We're having some struggles looking at materials that are appropriate for your teenage kids. And what we found when they looked at the 3 practices, they focus on welcoming, inclusion, activity. It could be as simple as being at your door and greeting the kids as they come in each day, making eye contact and making them feel welcome. Then we have engaging strategies, brain breaks, and transition. I think that in younger grades, we see transitions more easily because we're switching maybe from one topic or one activity to the next. That's important to do in the high school classroom as well, to keep the kids with their intention, to make sure that they get that stretch break. If they're seated too long, it just doesn't work well. And then at the end, you should have an optimistic closure. So as the students are leaving, you're talking about something you learned today or something that makes you happy as you're walking out the door, just to have that significant goodbye to your class as they're taking off. This was something that the high school was very excited about, and it's our first year. So we're seeing some use it with a little bit more fidelity than others, but it's coming along really nice. And I think I think we've found something that really appeals to them. Let's go ahead. And the next slide, what we did was we just placed some of the programs and the practices that we have here within our district. On the bottom right-hand corner is the castle wheel that Linda had referred to earlier. It has the 5 competencies of self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and social awareness. In a little while, when we're looking at panorama information, you're going to see those competencies. We have focused on some of those within the district. Other programs that we have within the district, PBIS, we know especially the kids at the younger levels, they love those. Morning meetings. It has been really interesting to see this year because our kids are struggling. It is post-COVID and we do need to get back into a routine, but it isn't the same as it was before. And so the morning meetings have been a great vehicle for teachers to meet with the kids, and especially in the younger grade levels. You just have a conversation about behaviors. Zones of regulation. If you haven't had a chance to ask a kid what zone they're in, most of them would be able to tell you. Green, blue, red, yellow. So, and that gives us an indicator of how things are going within that student's world. Restorative practice, of course, that is wonderful, especially I see it more in the older students when they sit down and they try to work through a difficulty that they're having and being able to reintegrate back into the school or into a classroom. It's building of relationships. At this time, I'll hand it over to Christina.
So I'm going to talk about the data and what it's telling us. And I would welcome any questions during the data so that we don't have to go back to these portions. So if you have a question, or of course if you have one at the end, definitely ask about the data. So before we get started, what is Panorama? Panorama is a new data visualization tool that we've adopted. We're going on year 2. And so I wanted, go ahead, next slide. I wanted to just put you in the place as far as what we've done so far. So we have measured students' SEL, teachers, staff, and when I say staff, I mean our custodians, our secretaries, our teaching assistants, our SCAs, and then teachers, everyone that's certified, and this does include principals, and our families. And so we surveyed our students, K through 12, in the fall, spring, and winter of 2021-22. We did families. I believe your handout may have that we did it twice. Sorry, that is a mistake. It was only in the fall. And teachers and staff were surveyed fall and spring. The way we rolled it out, we provided professional development. We wanted to make sure teachers and principals and everyone knew what the next steps were after receiving the data, and Tanya's going to talk more about that. We sent families letters. We wanted to make sure that they knew their children were going to be surveyed regarding social emotional learning. And we then looked at the data and said, and had discussions, and then included the points we felt strongly that should be part of our district school improvement plan, and the school improvement plan. Align everything together. All right, so the next slide, let's take a look at the data we use to determine this year's, to put in this year's district improvement plan. So I wanted to share spring 2022 data, and this is for grades 3-5. And you can see in the upper left-hand corner, we had a total of 655 responses. And like Tanya hinted, the CASEL competencies included to measure were supportive relationships, self-management, and social awareness. And so we had 89% in supportive relationships, and 67%, and then 64%. So by looking at this slide here, you can see that social awareness was the area for grades 3-5 that was the lowest. I do want to point to the column that says compared to others nationally. So we also can see how we did compared to other schools that use this tool as well. And so you can see that in self-management, we performed in the 20th to 39th percentile. And then going back to social awareness, we did go down 2 points. But if you take a look at supportive relationships, we really celebrated that we increased that. And what does that mean? That means that every student has an adult, has someone in their life that they trust. And that's very, very important. Next slide.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
It's me over here. Oh. So there's, I see that we have the number of respondents. Do we also have what that actually means is the percentage of students in that grade that are actually participating? Because obviously that's 89% of 655 respondents. So what does that actually mean for the student body overall?
That is a very good question, and I can get back to you on that, but that is very important. As you'll see as we go through the slides, you'll see that number change. In the slide for, yep, there we go, students 6 through 12, we had 504 responses. And we have the 3 areas again: supportive relationships, self-management, social awareness. And you can see that social awareness is still an area that we are going to focus on. Go to the next slide. Students grades K2. This one is done a little bit differently. For the surveys for 312, the students actually take the surveys themselves. For the K2, the teachers survey the student, and there's about 3 questions per student, and so they're given time, and they know their students, and they answer the 3 questions, and that's how that survey is done for the K2 students. And in this area, we have, if you take a look at the self-management for our K2 students, according to our teachers, it went up and had the greatest increase of 5 points. Go to the next slide. And also, our first year, we surveyed teachers and staff. We only had 56 responses. And in these 2 areas were cultural awareness and action and school climate. And you'll see that for cultural awareness, we were at 64%, and school climate, 51%. And then when you look at the teacher survey, all certified staff, all certified teachers, they had 1 additional area of professional learning about SEL, and you can see that that was at 43%. School climate was at 43%. And I want to just bring your attention to the first one, cultural awareness and action. Compared to the nation, we were between the 60th and 79th percentile. So that's something that's really great too. Let's go to the next slide.
All right, I'm sorry, I'm gonna ask one more question. On these last, looks like students K through 12 and teachers and staff, it says changed since last survey. Am I assuming that's meant to be what the others say, changed since winter 2022?
Okay, so for the staff and the teacher
When
one,
was the last survey?
the last one was for the fall.
Okay, so these are different?
Yes, so if you go to,
I was just
back a
curious,
little
'cause the
bit,
other ones have it they have it
go back a
mentioned.
couple of slides to launched,
Well, right, so on these, they say changed since winter 2022.
go back again, launched, right there. You'll see that families only served in fall.
Okay, that's what I was
And
supposed to, yeah, thanks.
actually, because that was like a mistake, and then teachers just fall and spring. Yep. All right, so let's go back to the, actually, we're on a new slide, families. Okay, great. So for families, we have 594 responses, and this survey was given to our families directly from Panorama to email accounts. And all families that shared their email accounts with us in Skyward, they received a survey. So we had 4 areas: school climate, school safety, barriers to engagement, and family engagement. And you can see in the first 2 areas, we went up from, well, actually, it was up, and then barriers to engagement and family engagement decreased. Let's go to the next slide. And then I just wanted to share the response rates for the different areas. So for the first, in the first column, adult measures, so there's the answer, right? Well, that's kind of the answer, right? We'll get the other answer to you. So we have 32.1% total of our teachers and staff that participated in the survey. And in the middle column is a total regarding our 3 through 12 students, 40%. And in the last column, that is the K2 survey that our teachers fill out, and that is 75.1%. So you can see out of the 3 different categories, the teachers filling out the survey for our K2 kids, that was the biggest percent. Go to the next slide. Okay, so now it's year 2, and that's the year we're in now.
Just before we go on to the future,
I would just suggest, I don't know if you've done this, but for the family surveys, they're just all grouped together. So the thing that I would ask, is what do we do with this information? And, one thing I would think is if there's trouble at a particular building, of the culture and climate in that building, when it comes to safety and et cetera, so separate out the families of high school students or the families of different elementary buildings, and the same thing with the students when you're in the 3 through 5 and the K through 2 is one particular building doing an all-star champion job, and the others are all about the same. So what are they doing in that building that you could emulate in the other buildings or something along those lines?
Fantastic point that I failed to say at the beginning. I'm providing a district accumulation of all the data. It is broken down for us to see it per school. And so district administrators can see that and do exactly what you just said. What's going on in this building versus this building after looking at the data. And then we also, going back to what board member Laura Orr said, we also have to look at those responses too. If a school has 400 kids and only 40% filled out the survey, well, we have to look at every piece, right? Okay, why is that as well? And so thank you for bringing that up, because I did forget to say that at the beginning, that it is broken up per school.
And just to add to that, that data is part of, as Ms. Kale Lewandowski said, it is part of the school improvement plans, and it's also part of the administrative goals too, particularly with the SEL goal. Panorama is the measure that we've used for that.
Can I ask a question also on the data side of things? And I'm trying to remember back, so maybe I'm wrong on this. So the data, the way you're presenting that, the percentage is favorability rating, which means 4 or 5. Was that what's considered favorable?
Mm-hmm.
So perhaps Panorama lets you do this, I would assume. It might be interesting to look at the rather than looking at percentage to see if, it says we go up 4% in the 4 or 5, to look at the distribution of each of these things, because there's a huge difference between everyone being clustered at a 3 and everyone being clustered at a 1, right? So if we looked at the distribution on all these things, we might see changes either for better or for worse that we're not able to see with the, Panorama decided 4 and 5 is what we want. We may be able to see more granular change if we look at where the data are piling up on each of these things. So that's another suggestion.
So Brian, are you saying look at the individual questions and see where we fall on those?
No, go back to the sorry, and
I'm sorry, I can't really see where we're at here.
Can we go back to any of these? So it says percent favorable, and we're using that as a benchmark. So 3% went up or 4% went down. But what percent favorable means, I think, as I recall, is that that's the percent who marked 4 or 5, and we've just decided 4 and 5 on a 5-point scale are what we're going for. A different way to look at these data that would show something very different is if we look at, does the mean change, right? So we could have 68% who are 4s and 5s, and everyone else is a 1,
right,
or everyone else is a 3. And if everyone else is a 3, we might be celebrating a lot more because the mean would be a whole lot higher, as opposed to we may be able to see areas that we can't see by just pulling the highest ones and sort of either celebrating that they're high or lamenting that they're low. So we might also, with family engagement, maybe everyone's a 3, or maybe everyone's a 1. We don't know that. So it seems like that if Panorama would let us do that, that would be really valuable data for really understanding what's going on.
I mean, and this might be a little bit different than what you're suggesting, but we can see the responses to every question. So we can see, under each of those 3 headings or 4 headings, what the questions were and how people responded. So we can see the ones that are lower and the ones that are higher. So that gives us some really good specific information about what we're seeing. So
you know, you could see one of the questions much lower than another question.
Also, that would be also a super important thing to see, you know, is one question pulling differently.
Yes.
But when I see something like that, 22%, I would really want to know, are those 22% on the very lowest number, are they all essentially, you know, the 88% who are saying we're not engaged, or 78%? Are they like completely disengaged, or are they like sitting at the mean? And that I think tells us a very different story about where we intervene and where we don't. So it's certainly question level, but also distribution level.
Thank you.
I love that suggestion. Thank you. All right. Next one. Okay, so then now we're in year 2, and you're probably sitting there asking yourselves, what did they do differently? Well, I'm going to tell you what we did differently. So we sent staff a survey. We sent teachers a survey, and we wanted to know when did they feel we should give the survey to the students. We thought their opinion was very valuable, and so we did rearrange how we provided the surveys. You'll see I use the word assessment. You know, that's kind of used interchangeably, but I meant surveys in this context. The second bullet, family surveys were provided via a Google form this time. We really were trying to do more outreach, and unfortunately, John, if you go back to the family one again, I wanted to just, the family survey, if you take a look at the responses, it's 594. Okay, now go back to the slide where we're at. With the Google form, only 198, which is about 0.04%. So I have to talk to the team, and we have to think of another plan. So do we go back to using the panorama, or what do we do? And then Board Member Ravi, you talked about having like the family survey directly to the high school parents and so forth. Right, we did that. We did that, and Panorama does that as well. And so, you know, we're just gonna go back to the team and try to figure out another plan to try to get more families to respond.
Is the Google form mobile friendly? Does it require a computer?
I am so glad you asked that, because I thought of a QR code too. So I had QR codes put outside doors and windows, and handouts, and it was a bit.ly link, and I tested it on an iPad, a mobile phone, and a desktop computer. So I wanted to make sure, because I know a lot of our families do a lot of things on their phones. I mean, I know I do. Like, I did my kids' 5 essential survey, and I did it on my phone waiting on my kid from basketball practice. So I wanted to make sure it was available in different formats. And so we have the third bullet, teachers, staff given survey in August, the first weeks upon their return from break. Okay, so here was the plan. We know that teachers get really busy when they return to school. It's a brand new year, they're planning, meeting. So we said, okay, let's give the survey early before we get deep into other things. And so we'll take a look at those results in a moment. And then the other change we made, students were directly given the survey through their email, in conjunction to a teacher saying, here's the link, take the survey by going to this website. So we wanted to give students more options. If students were at home and they got they read their email. And then we did realize that young people in grades 6 through 12 may not read their email as much as maybe we do. And so we're going to go back to the drawing board again to see what we can do there. And then, of course, we continue to provide professional development. We also And, Linda Gibbons, huge proponent and advocate for this new program called Student Success. So we have survey portion of Panorama and Student Success. The Student Success, the purpose is to help us with our MTSS process, and with PBIS and staff meetings, it's to make the data visual and more accessible when making decisions about students. We provided professional development to social workers, psychologists, and administrators, and if teachers were interested, they also received professional development for this. This is like a pilot year. Next slide, please. So here's our data from the most current winter data point. For grades 3-5, you see that social awareness was an area that we said we were going to make part of our district improvement plan. And so we do have data there that compared nationally, we're in the 40th to 59th percentile. But if you take a look at that self-management for our 3-5 kiddos, that went up by 2. And I read a recent article by NAEP because their results came out. And they stated that if schools can capture that self-management, self-regulation in students, which basically means students advocating for themselves, students getting to work right away on their work when it's time to work in class. If we can get that area, self-management, to really go up, then we're going to see that decrease in what we're all going through as a result of the pandemic. So that was like I think it was maybe December when I read that article, so it was pretty interesting. All right, next slide. Grade 6-12, we had supportive relationships at 81%. So again, very, very proud of that because that's our middle school kids, that's our high school kids, and they're reporting that they have a trusted adult in their life. So that's really great to see that. Self-management, 72%, social awareness, 59%. Grades K2, we have increases from our teachers' perception here. Emotion regulation, social awareness, and self-management. And you can see the self-management. So when I saw that data for self-management, I was like, oh, that's fantastic. Okay, it increased by 6. Next slide. And now here's our teacher staff survey. Remember, they took this in August. And if you look at the responses, 174 certified teachers and staff 45. So we have to go back to the drawing board because that plan didn't work. We need to figure out, we thought that maybe getting everyone's attention early could increase surveys, the response to the surveys. And now I'm thinking, okay, maybe other things like getting their class together, the kids are coming back, communicating with families was precedent over taking a survey. Next slide. And then we have our winter response rates for the perception, which is the K2 survey, 89.1% out of 1,087. So at that point of time, we had 1,087 K2 students. And for the 3 through 12, 47.8%. Next slide. So in conclusion, for my part, educators now have the ability to align all their assessments to truly see how a student is performing and provide the supports the students need. We have the ability to view 4 different areas: the academics of a student, which includes teachers being able to see not only how students performed on assessments, but they can also see their grades on Skyward, behavior, SEL, and attendance of every student. Student success can make a difference to improve systems such as MTSS and PBIS. We want to see our students being successful and provide those supports when we see that intervention is needed.
Our final slide tonight looks at some of the resources that we have. When you have the data from the surveys, teachers and administrators can use that to go into a piece that's called Playbook. And inside Playbook, it's arranged in such a way that it has activities, lesson plans, different things you can do to help improve areas that you think your students need more support. What's kind of neat about Playbook too is they have a rating system, so it's done in apples, and there's 5 apples altogether. So you can look for what activities might be most pertinent or relevant to the students at the different age levels and use those within your classroom. We do play with them a little bit in our high impact tutoring program as well. It's a nice enough lesson layout that you can choose something that's fairly straightforward, and it could be conversation without a lot of tools. There are some things that a teacher might choose to do in their classroom that would require a little bit more prep time. But it is nice to have that resource and be able to implement that within the classrooms across the district. Ms. Webster has been working very hard the last month or two to restructure our SEL website. If you have a chance, it's linked. All of these pictures have the links to them that you can go out and take a look at the materials. And within that website, they have the SEL newsletters from the last several years. Again, we do like to use the SMORE app when we're putting those together because it does have a wide range of languages that it can be transferred and translated into. And this is where we wrap for the evening. Do you have any other questions?
Board members, any questions? Any further questions? No. All right. Thank you very much for giving us this presentation so late in the evening. There is a call for future special executive meetings, unfortunately, for student discipline. Thursday night, March 9th, and Monday, March 13th. And now the 22nd and 23rd. So 4 of them coming up. Superintendent's report.
John, can you refresh? Okay, so I know a lot of our Wiley citizens are not here to, it's a late hour, to hear this information that's going to be shared. I've been adding it even this afternoon as I've been getting updates. So we will make this available via our board updates. Catherine will highlight these particular items. We can have discussion about it since it is the superintendent report. You feel free to ask questions. I have been working with our attorneys, the Regional Office of Education, and today I just heard back with more information from ISBE around some of the questions that we've been getting. Even tonight we heard about the vote. What did we actually approve and vote on? There's been information shared in the community and with me and with others regarding the school code about the public hearings and closing a school. And the third question was the motion to, did we properly move the closing of Wiley School? So I'm just going to address those really quickly. We'll make sure, I'll send these slides to Dr. Hindhorst tomorrow so she can put them in, she has a Coyote newsletter. I know they use Class Dojo and some other spaces, so we'll make sure that she has this information so she can share it widely because we have been receiving a lot of questions about this. And then at the end of this information, I'm going to kind of share some final conclusions. And then what I would like the board to do, not tonight, but at our next meeting, is bring forth a charge for us to start putting together the facilities committee, because we're ready to move to that point next. So the first one, if you could go back to the last slide. Okay. That was my summary. So was board action at the February 21st meeting to approve the asbestos abatement at Wiley School and to approve the consulting contract with Ideal Engineering, environmental, otherwise appropriate. So again, I have kind of pulled this information together with the from the advice of our attorneys, our board attorney, Dennis Weedman, who consults the board directly. He, from Robinson Schwartz, he worked with our contracts and within the firm of Robinson Schwartz, everyone kind of has specialty areas. So he reached out to 2 attorneys who this is more so their specialty areas. And between the 3 of them, they provided this information to me and to the board president. And then I've had additional conversations with our regional superintendent as well, Gary Lewis, who represents the region. So, concerned citizens have questioned whether the vote to abate asbestos at Wiley was invalid because the motion did not follow strict parliamentary procedure, either because the vote did not restate exactly the action item then under consideration, or because the president did not read exactly the action item from the agenda before Secretary Carter made the motion to approve the action. That basically is a compilation of several different emails that we've received from concerned citizens that we pulled all together into kind of one question. So the response is, although the board has adopted Robert's Rules of Order as part of our board policy, Robert's Rule of Order is only a guide for implementing our procedures. It does not constitute law or regulation in the operation of public board meetings. As board policy 2220 states, it's merely a guide. In the present case, there does not appear to have been any doubt by board members as to what they were voting on when action was taken on agenda items 12.5A and 12.5B, which one was the asbestos, the approval to move forward with asbestos, and 12.5B was the approval of the Ideal Engineering environmental contract. There were no questions by any board members as to what they were voting for after Secretary Carter clarified the item and made her motion. So in summary for this particular question, this vote occurred after administration presented its abatement plan for Wiley for more than 1 hour earlier in the meeting. We also note the process by which the board president called the vote for agenda items 12.5A and 12.5B was the same process used for all the other 8 action items on the agenda during the same meeting that evening. There does not appear to be any confusion as to what vote occurred in relation to agenda items 12.5A and 12.5B or any of the other action items on the meeting agenda that evening. I should have noted that our board attorney, while he is not often present here with us, he does watch our YouTube videos. So he watched the YouTube. He worked with Lori on the minutes, and so they watched the meeting on the 21st, as well as the meeting on February 7th. So any questions about that question before I move to the second one? Okay. The second question that we received from several concerned citizens was the Board of Education required to approve a motion to, and I don't want to offend anyone, but I'm going to use the quotes, close Wiley School to implement the asbestos abatement plan. Our attorneys do not believe the board was required to approve a motion to specifically close Wiley to implement its asbestos abatement plan. The 2 approved action items to conduct the asbestos abatement at Wiley and to approve the consulting agreement with Ideal were appropriate to effectuate the district's plan as explained by the superintendent during the meeting. Wiley does not have to be closed by the BOE to implement the asbestos abatement plan. The board approved the asbestos abatement project and approved a consulting agreement with Ideal Engineering. Part 2 of that, what remains of the project is still to be completed for the district to subcontract the actual abatement of the asbestos and to temporarily reassign staff and students to different attendance centers for the 23-24 school year so the abatement can occur. The board will eventually approve a bid and agreement with the vendor to perform the actual abatement at a future board meeting. We did not actually do that. I know there was some misunderstanding about that, but all we did on the 21st was approve the design contract with Ideal. They will now move forward and design the project, and they will assist us with the bidding contract, and we'll bring that information back to the board. As for reassigning students and staff, administration already possesses this authority, as evidenced by the fact that it has been reassigning students from Dr. Williams Elementary School to different attendance centers throughout the district for many years. We've actually been doing that since 2016. Administration also reassigns staff district-wide each school year, and the board approves these assignments through the consent agenda's personnel action items. Are there any questions about that response? And lastly, we received quite a few emails about the school code section. I know we received some specific language about school code that directly impacted the city of Chicago or Chicago public schools, but there is also some parity language that would kind of include downstate schools and other schools in the state of Illinois. So was Urbana School District required to conduct public hearings before approving the asbestos abatement at Wiley? So basically, this slide just lists the actual code language in the citation. I'm not going to read it, but it is directly from the code. The response from our attorneys: our legislative research of PA 102-204 indicates the legislation was enacted in response to a Chicago area school board's permanent closure of one of its high schools without community input. Given the context which prompted the Public Acts enactment by the General Assembly, we believe the statutory mandate for conducting public hearings prior to board action to close a school is required only when a school board is considering permanently closing a school, not when school renovations or construction projects are contemplated and students and staff will be temporarily reassigned to other attendance centers. I confirmed that today through the state board and our regional office of education. If at some point we move forward with closing Wiley, as has been discussed from our public, forevermore, and changing it into something that would no longer be a student attendance center, then yes, we would be bound to conduct the public hearings as listed in PA 102-204. Any questions about? So final conclusions from our attorneys. Our attorneys conclude the board's actions during its February 21st business meeting with respect to agenda items 12.5A and 12.5B were otherwise proper. They also conclude that because the board did not vote to permanently close Wiley School, the district was not required to conduct the 3 public hearings pursuant to 10-22.13 of the school code. And like I said, this was confirmed with me today. I know there were some concerned citizens who, can I finish my statement? Who reached out to the regional superintendent, and I believe someone actually reached out to the state board, so they will share that information with me, and again, I think they were in agreement that we were not required to have the public hearings. Go ahead, Robbie.
I was going to ask a question about the slide before this one.
Sure.
Now, I understand what you're saying about, this Wiley's not being permanently closed with this, and so that's why this doesn't apply.
Sure.
But the question that came up, just popped in my head after you were saying that, is would it require board approval to change, keep Wiley open, but change it into a different functioning school?
From what I've been told by our attorneys and the regional superintendent today, as long as the building remains a student attendance center and is still considered to be a school.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering about, the
Well,
student attendance center. So if it was turned,
Just want to clarify your question, Rob.
Yeah.
Do you mean would that require a public hearing, or would that require a board vote?
would it well, I guess I was going to
Both.
just say board vote was my question. Like if you changed Wiley to a STEAM academy,
Oh, absolutely.
or change
yes.
it to a magnet school of some kind, or
Sure, yes.
would that require a board vote?
Yes. Well, and we're going to talk about the charge of the committee. That would fall within the scope of what the board would charge the committee's work, which would then come forward to us here. So yes, is the answer to that. Any questions about any of those three? I know you guys have received lots of emails about those three questions. I have received lots of emails, so I kind of charged our attorneys to work on this, and they've been working on it the last couple weeks since our meeting. So next slide, John. And again, I'm not asking the board to do this tonight, but I did want to formally ask if we can add an agenda item to the March 21st business meeting. We've started at the district level talking about the facilities planning committee that will then hopefully be comprised of several groups of volunteers, teachers, parents, building principals from all the buildings, not just Wiley. District representatives and board members. I'm going to be meeting with our 3 new incoming board members, and of course inviting them to be part of the process sooner rather than later, since they're all running unopposed. We don't actually have to wait till April 4th to start meeting with them and kind of trying to loop them in. This will probably be a very large group of people, so we'll have to think about where the meetings would happen. It wouldn't, our last large facility public committee kind of met in this space. This group will not be able to do that, so we'll have to really think about, where we will have these meetings. If it would be at UMS maybe, the Commons, I think UMS, the room 1520 might be a good space for us, because it would allow us to be maybe start off in large groups, because we're going to be looking at a lot of different topic areas. There might be some small group work. I would like us to kind of use the same format that we have in the past for these public facilities committees, where we have them hopefully be co-led and co-facilitated, not by me, but by some other people who hopefully would be willing to take the lead. And then we've started looking at dates. So one of the requirements anytime we put together one of these big facilities committees, or any kind of district-wide committee that is going to meet for several months, is that the people who volunteer to participate can actually be present at all the meetings. So we're going to sit down and kind of start scoping out meeting dates. I guess my preference would be that I typically try to hold Tuesdays. I know a lot of people here hold Tuesdays as a night that we could meet, because it is our regular board meeting night. And so maybe looking out at some future Tuesdays, starting maybe in April and going out for several months as a potential start to getting this group together. But before we can start meeting, we're working on a survey that we can send out. We need a charge from the board to begin this process.
So yeah, I'd want to begin this as soon as possible, and since this is a board subcommittee, it'd be subject to the Open Meetings Act and be
Yes.
publicly noticed and all of that as well, correct?
Yes, so that's the last
Sorry.
bullet, that these would be public meetings, which will be a little challenging. There was a lot of setup involved when we were holding our meetings at 1520, in 1520, before. So it'll be a lot of work for John to kind of move cameras and things like that, but they would definitely have to be, I don't know if we would have to have them be live and on YouTube, but they would definitely be public meetings where we could set up chairs and people could come and sit and watch the meeting happen. So we'll have to talk about that piece too, but.
Any other questions?
I had a quick one. Sorry, I woke everybody up there banging that. So this committee, can you refresh my memory, Paul, and also for people who may not know, the last time we had one of these gigantic meetings, I'm thinking was when we were talking about the land use for the middle school and the high school, but can you give us a little background?
Yeah, this was about 2007, not 2007, about 7 years.
That was 2017 was just a really small
Yeah, it was
campus land.
right.
You're
So,
talking
well,
about
2017, what we did at that point in time was prioritize the remaining facilities projects across the entire district. And at that point, we came up with like the top item of like 1 and 1A. You know, 1 was finish the elementary schools, and then the next thing down was try to find a way to fix this space. And then the next thing was do the campus land study for the property we acquired on the secondary campus, or the high school campus, sorry.
And so
the last time we did this big group was 2009.
Oh, okay, because since I was on the board, when you guys were all and I mean, the board members gave input, but I remember, Paul, you and John were there, and you met with a lot of community members to talk about the land use for the secondary campus, and there was like family members involved, neighbors who were going to be affected, business leaders. Is it going to be that sort of thing? Is that what we're talking about here, or? I mean, because it got a lot of community input, so that's why I'm saying.
And we traveled to the individual buildings too, to tour the different facilities and what their needs were.
So I mean, in my memory, it
Including
was a very
Wiley.
collaborative process,
Yeah.
and there was so much input. It was great that we got even people who didn't necessarily have kids
No,
in the school,
right.
but
I mean,
people
we
who
had
would be
somebody
affected.
representing the real estate
Right.
area.
The
We had a
meeting
lot-
travel to each
we had a
school,
lot. We
too.
had a number of teachers. We had the UA was involved.
Yeah.
It was a fairly collaborative group, and then at the end we just kind of ranked all of the different projects into different tiers and came out with kind of it had kind of affirmed some pre-existing commitments we had made in the big facilities committee that Diane Marlin led before I was on the board.
Okay.
The other thing too that I remember about that is other board members can come and we can sit in the audience, but we just don't participate. We can just come and observe and listen to everything, even though there are I think there was the 2 board members, Paul and John, on the facilities committee, so.
But because these are going to be public notice meetings, we can have more than 2 board members
Right.
participate if.
Yeah,
if
yeah.
that's great.
Yeah, and that committee was co-chaired. It wasn't
Yes.
just single-chaired. It was,
Yeah. I put co-facilitated, but co-chaired is probably a better word. I'm going to change that. Other questions? Ravi, you look like you have a question.
I think
Or
Ann,
comment.
I think Ann covered on what I was going to say, because the thing I keep hearing in the email storm in the last few months is, in this prior one in 2009 or 2007, whenever it was, there were a lot of more. It wasn't just, administrators, teachers, and parents. It was someone from the city of Urbana, Regional Planning Commission, police department. I heard,
yeah, Carl Gannett was part of it too.
all sorts of different organizations and things in the community, so they could bring different input and different perspectives in the thing.
Other comments?
So
Okay.
I think you have your charge.
All right. So I will put a formal agenda item on the 21st. So I'm going to skip to our other superintendent report highlights. As was mentioned, I'm not sure if anyone mentioned this in the public comments, but we did share, we have communicated out the meet and greet nights for Wiley. So these are, we just kind of shared this as a save the date. We are communicating with families that we will be moving forward with option 2. So this was shared out in addition to another map. We included a kind of, some of the feedback I've heard is this map is not as easy to read in order to find where you actually live. So we kind of zoomed in and took more of a street view map. We included that in the Skylert that Wiley families received, just saying kind of hold these dates, and then we're going to be communicating specifically based on what zone you're in, and inviting you to a very specific school for a meeting. We're creating information about every school, some school highlights, something that I've heard from a couple Wiley parents and staff members as well who have been visiting the other schools with Dr. Franklin, is some people have never been in another building other than Wiley, so they don't know much about the other schools. They've not ever been in any of the other buildings. So we're going to provide some information for people via, we've been communicating with everyone as a big group, so our next level of communication will be by zone. So people will get very specific emails about, on March 22nd, you will be attending the Thomas Paine meet and greet, and we'll share information specifically with the students that we know would be attending Thomas Paine. We have had a couple of families reach out and ask about petitioning when I sent the email out on Friday, and so I know there are a few that are considering that because of daycare. So we are going to have a separate petitioning process this spring for just the Wiley families. Someone emailed me and said, can we go to all of them if we would like? And of course, anyone who is wanting to go to all 6 meet and greets, they absolutely could do that. One problem we have is the Leo meet and greet is at the same time as as Yankee Ridge is. Leo has such a small number of students that are going to be potentially going there. And Yankee Ridge has a much bigger group, and it was really hard to find a time. You know, we stay away from Mondays and Fridays. Wednesdays is a church night for a lot of people, so we were really stuck with some Tuesdays. Thursdays we've been doing negotiations, so our window for when we could do these in March was pretty limited, and we really wanted to make sure we got them done in March. So this has been communicated to families. We've shared with them that they will be receiving more communication specific to where they live. I also sent an email to, I don't have a slide for this because I just did it today, but we've also shared an email with staff about the workers and people who will be in the building over spring break. So the architects will be there measuring windows, measuring for cabinetry. As we've heard, there are a lot of lead times on some of the materials, so we hope to get in there this during spring break and get a lot of measuring done. Ideal will be there during spring break doing a significant amount of sampling, flooring, ceiling, window caulks, well, I don't know what else, Randy, plaster, door, drywall, and so we shared that with staff today, so they would be aware that all those folks will be in the building. IGW will be in the building over spring break doing a lot of just measuring and information gathering. They specifically are going to be starting the roofing bid very soon. So we also will probably have a contract for IGW on the business meeting agenda because they're going to be doing quite a bit of work. Sure.
So what I gathered from part of what you said is like people in zone 1A, they will get a letter at some point that just says, or an email or a letter that says you are going to Thomas Paine.
Here's your meeting.
The meeting night is March 22nd. But for the zone 0 people, where do they go? Are they just get to choose where they go, or what's the dealio?
The zone people, the zone 0 people are in other districts already. So their initial assignment was going to be whatever their home school was. Actually, everybody will get an individualized letter with a kind of, I don't want to, should I spoil it? It'll have like a little message from the principal of the incoming school and some information about the school. All the principals are very excited to have new students there and be welcoming. So everybody will get an individualized letter with their individual assignment.
So zone 0 is whatever their address says they're supposed to have gone to at that location.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, so moving on from Wiley, other news. Thursday and Friday are student-led conferences. Just a reminder to families watching or looking at this later. They are also parent-teacher conferences, but we do ask families to bring your student to participate in the conferences with you. Dual language information sessions. There are 2 upcoming dual language informational sessions for new families. This is pretty standard. We do this, John can go to the next one. We do this every spring. And so there is an info session for Spanish dual language on March 27th and French dual language on March 22nd. One thing that is changing, and Lupe will share this information out, some of the feedback that we've received from a lot of public comment heard is that there are other families and other schools beyond Dr. Williams and Leo who would like the opportunity to participate in the dual language programs beyond just the people in those attendance areas at those 2 buildings. So we have received that feedback, and we will be opening up additional spaces in Spanish dual language for anyone from any building to participate. It won't just be primarily for Dr. Williams and Leo families moving forward. So Lupe Ricconi will share that information with families and discuss that more at these info sessions. Last week, Tiger Academy and the Freedom Schools open house. I want to thank I know Tori had a conflict, but I think all the other board members stopped by. I didn't get to talk to everybody, but it was a well-attended evening. You can see there's a picture of Mayor Marlin, Deshaun Williams, Kelly Hill from CUSF, Laura's in this one, Chandra Bishop from City Council. So we had a lot. We had other City Council members stop by, City of Urbana employees. The students really took ownership of the night, and it was their night to shine, and they really did shine, and we're super proud of them, and they were very proud of being able to show off their space. So congrats to our Tiger Academy youth and the Freedom Schools for a wonderful open house, and thanks for the staff for really working so hard with those students that are there. So Urbana wrestling, we have a state champion. Well, she was 3rd place, but she's still a champion. So yay. So we'll have to invite Jordan over. I know her plaque arrived today from IHSA, so we'll have to have her come to a meeting, and we can congratulate her in person and get to see her hardware that she received. So congratulations to Jordan for placing 3rd in the state finals. Read Across America was this past Saturday, and so many of us were there either as readers, greeters. On the left there, that's Miss Leroy from Leo read with her granddaughter. I know Dr. Franklin read in one of her stories. Many of us were just there to kind of welcome people for the day. It was a very well-attended Read Across America. I think people were really excited to be out kind of post-pandemic or moving into post-pandemic, to be in a space where people could gather and enjoy one another again in person. So it was a great event. So thanks everyone. Kim was kind of our organizer for this year, and all the people. I think Katie's in that picture, and we had a ton of UST staff members who came out and enjoyed the day. Everyone here, I think, has their March staff appreciation program. So thank you again to the We Love Urbana and UHS PTSA for making sure they take care of us every month. And the only big upcoming date that we added for this month is next week is spring break. I think we're all looking forward to a break. I know it's been a challenging, I should have put some pictures of the fire damage on here. I didn't think of that until later, but anyway. We're all kind of spread out all over the district. About half of us are here, and the rest of us are in buildings. And so we'll send something out. We'll be opening back up to the public, I think, after today, so people can start coming back and picking up records and transcripts and things like that. So we appreciate everyone's patience with us as we just kind of redistributed everyone. I know I will speak for myself. I never thought I would be moving my stuff back over here in this building, but here we are. So, yay. That's it, Bob. Yep. Yep.
Are there any board reports tonight?
I just wanted to give mention to Michael's comments earlier in the meeting.
Yes.
And although I sit in the seat as a board member, I feel a little bit powerless to suggest what is next, but I feel like it is time is of the essence to figure out how to help students feel safe and feel like they have a learning environment they want to be in.
Absolutely.
Any other board reports tonight?
I just wanted to second what Dr. Ivy Tatum said about the Freedom Schools open house. I went and saw them and also adult ed, which I was really glad to see the adult ed space, but to speak for our students, every kid to a fault was tripping over themselves to come and speak to all the adults who came into the building, and we're proud of their space. And if any of them are listening, I loved the presentations they had on the walls, the history panels that they'd done, and the goals that they'd done. They were a real credit to our district, and I think they should be proud of themselves. I'm proud of them, and I'm really hopeful that they have a great time being in that new space. So thank you to everybody in the administration for opening it. It was the highlight of probably my whole semester so far.
Any other board?
I just want to say, not only when we were at the Freedom School looking around, the adult ed is beautiful. I mean, those teachers and students are very happy to be in a more functional space. So I was very happy to see that side on the other side of the Freedom School. So great job.
All right. Any last board reports? If not, the chair would entertain a motion for closed session for collective bargaining matters between the district and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees. Roll call, please.
Member Hasanadka?
Yes.
Member Hall?
Yes.
Member Orr?
Yes.
Member Ogalski?
Yes.
Member Carter votes yes. Vice President Exum? President Pulaski?
Yes, we're in closed session, so we'll give the room 10 minutes to clear, except for the people who need to be here.